Te doy la bienvenida al podcast Marca Personal y Liderazgo. Este es el podcast donde te guío para que puedas elevar tu conciencia de liderazgo y crear una marca personal poderosa. Soy Karim Raymond, experta en marca personal de alto impacto. Mi objetivo es empoderarte para que puedas compartir un mensaje auténtico y significativo con el mundo. En cada episodio te proporcionaré las herramientas y estrategias prácticas que necesitas para llevar tu liderazgo al siguiente nivel. Juntos exploraremos cómo puedes descubrir y desarrollar tu verdadero potencial de liderazgo y cómo puedes crear una marca personal que se alinee con tu visión y propósito. Si estás listo para comenzar a hacer una diferencia significativa en el mundo, sintoniza el podcast Marca Personal y Liderazgo. Today, I would say is one of my most special episodes of this chapter of this podcast because I have the woman who has been an inspiration for me for so long, that has been a guide, a mentor, a friend, and someone who's been who demonstrate that's true to her own. For whoever hasn't heard of Michelle Villalobos, she's here with us today. She's so many things, but I'm going to focus in 4 aspects of her and what I know, what I've seen her, because I have witnessed her growth for almost 15 years, I think. And I started from a meeting when I saw her, and I was inspired by her energy and her desire to make a difference until I had the opportunity and the gift to be part of her community. And so she's a leader and a mentor. She's a speaker. She's an awesome and amazing speaker and training. Her keynote speaks are always amazing. I always, used to be in first row taking notes. She's an entrepreneur. And I would say is the first person ever that I have witnessed growing and expanding her business to numbers that I didn't imagine it was possible. Remember, I was going to college. My life was like, I'm gonna find a great job and someday retire. And she was the one who showed me it was possible to create my own path. And she's done that. And also she created an awesome community of leaders and mentors who are really working themselves first before going out there and making a difference. So Michelle, thank you so much for being here with me. I am so honored and excited to share you with the people who know me.
Oh, Kareem, thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you. I love chatting with you anytime. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh my God. Okay, so there is a few things that I want to talk with you about because I know they have been very important in my own journey. And I know that since I work with leaders and conscious leaders, making a difference and created a high impact personal brand, I know these aspects are very essentials. The first one that I want to know, and I think it was something happened with me in that conversation. It was, I think, the second week when we got locked down in COVID. And when people started to go crazy, like what's going to happen? We don't know what's happening in the world. And the thought that I had in my mind when we're going to have our group call that week, it was like, how are we going to do to make money while we're locked down? And then you come up with this amazing question that really turned the switch to me that there was something more important to focus on. And it was about what kind of leader are we going to be? And so I would like for you, Michelle, to share how did you come up with that like what was happening with you and why did you wanted to bring that conversation first before going into tactics and actions to take, like kind of like in a desperate way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm thinking back to that time. And I don't actually remember my thought process in coming up with that question or that topic. I do remember the exact words that I used, though, which was, if it was anything like most times when I was coming up with the inner circle call, it probably was just an aha moment. Like, I would wake up in the morning sometimes, I'd have a whole call planned, and then I'd wake up in that morning and be like, nope, scratch that. This is what we're doing. So it's entirely possible that that's what happened. But I do remember that my philosophy, as you well know, is that energy precedes outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that for years. And so I know that if we're coming from the energy of scarcity and fear and loss and holding on tightly, that we're not going to create anything amazing. Like, we're going to push away opportunities. We're going to push away clients. Our energy is not going to be the energy of abundance and receiving. And so knowing that I know that was probably in the foreground, recognizing that everybody I was witnessing was in fear and scarcity and concern. And I knew that as a leader, if I fostered more of that energy, it was not going to serve this community. And so my real true belief was at the time, that in the midst of these types of crises is where we get to show up as leaders. And so my knowing was that now more than ever. And so that was the question that I asked, is like, how do you answer the question, or how do you finish the statement, now more than ever? And tell me why the work that you do is more important in this moment than ever. And so that was the exercise we walked through that day that made such an impact on you and on a lot of people, apparently. As people still remind me about that was such a reframe for them. While the world was going into crazy chaos, we were thinking, how does what I do matter now more than ever? How do I show up as someone who's here to help and deliver value? And it worked. Almost every person, if not every single person, grew during those COVID years, those 2 years, 2020 and 2021. In our group, everybody's business grew.
Wow. Yes. I feel like in my body, I feel still the connection to that question. Michelle, I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey, because, most of us, I guess, would have maybe been through that, like going to the regular path of like, I'm going to school and I have this view of what my life is going to be. And I would like for you to share, like, how has it been for you to get to this place? Because you've been in a journey, and that journey is so inspiring to me. Yeah, I would like for you to share about it. How has it been?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out how far back to go. I think that I'll, in resonance with something you briefly touched on, like, I was brought up with a very strict upbringing. And my directive, or the story that I made up about the world, as you well know, was that in order to be safe and to be loved, I needed to achieve. So that was my like foundational programming, was achievement. And it led to, an entire first 30 years of my life focusing on achievement. I went to a really good school. I got 4.0. I got an master's degree in business. I graduated #1 in my class. Like, time after time, I just jumped to the next achievement and the next achievement and got to the top. And in my early 30s, realized like, I'm so miserable. I was drinking heavily to try to, like, now in hindsight, I know that what I was doing was trying to bypass the pain of not doing what I was put here on the planet to do. My heart, my soul from a very young age wanted to perform, wanted to sing, wanted to dance, wanted to create things and be artistic. And that was not encouraged in my family. So I did the achievement thing and then hit my 30s and was like driving to my super high paying, high profile job, like sobbing in tears every day. I was working for Ocean Drive magazine. If anybody knows Miami, Ocean Drive is like a big, fancy lifestyle magazine. I was partying with celebrities. Like I was living the life. From the outside looking in, it looked good. It looked like I had it made. I was making great money. I had a nice car, a great apartment. I was popular. I was out all the time, but I was like really, really out of alignment with my true nature, with my true gifts, with my true purpose, which I had never even explored. There was no concept of true anything. There was just like more achievement. And so the worse I got, the more I tried to achieve. And so it finally kind of hit a breaking point. I started my own business because I thought that's the next step for me, is to be an entrepreneur. And 7 years of that, I just worked my way into a a pit.
That's where I met you. When I don't know how far were you in when I met you in the Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah. So that's the thing, in hindsight, I guess I can make it seem very black and white, like it was all bad. But the truth is that all of it was part of the journey. And there were glimmers of insight and aha along the way. And the time that you met me is where I was starting to get really clear that like, ooh, I keep doing this. I keep running into the same thing. I find something I love and I turn it into this like achievement monster. Right. Like I started doing the Women's Success Summit and like I worked myself into the ground. I was sick because I was working so hard. Like even the things that when I would try to follow my heart, I didn't know how to do that without like overachiever Michelle coming out and like killing the vibe of the thing that I created. So 7 years into my business, we had already met. I was already doing the Women's Success Summit. I was.
Can I add something, because I was on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like I just admired you. I had no idea anything that was happening inside of you. And
Yeah.
and that's one of the things. Most times we compare ourselves to people that we perceive successful, and we don't really know what's happening inside of them. So it's very interesting when you share it, because yeah, sometimes you are the only one who's able to discover what's deep in.
Yeah. And also, yeah, that's so true. And everybody's wearing, I mean, I was definitely wearing a mask. I was, hiding from myself, right? I wasn't just hiding from you and from the audiences. I was hiding from myself. But let me tell you, like I would do the Women's Success Summit and then I was ducking out back to smoke cigarettes. I was like, that wasn't my brand. Nobody knew I was doing that, like, so there was definitely, there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of hiding, and there were glimmers of light and hope and like, oh, wow, that's where I discovered I love to be on a stage. Like maybe I'm not going to be a, Broadway actress, but there's this other way to be on a stage, so I stood that, all of that started emerging. Long story, already too long, too late. Long story short, I kind of crashed and burned in 2014. My health gave out. I was burning the candle at both ends. Now, in hindsight, knowing what I know about health, I was like probably burned out, adrenals, cortisol on fire, hormones out of whack. I had rashes all over my skin. I was eating badly, drinking too much. All of the things caught up with me. I got sick, crashed and burned. And my relationship fell apart at the same time in a very dramatic and public way. And I just literally took my foot off the gas for a couple months to heal, which I know, a lot of people can probably relate to. And the business dried up. Like no more money coming in because I wasn't making the calls. I wasn't writing the proposals. I wasn't doing the networking and the outreach. Like it just dried up. And so long story, very short, I met a mentor. I saw the model that he was running and I joined his mentoring program. And for the first time, I got a different kind of mentoring. I thought I was buying business mentoring, which I'd had before, but in this case, he was a spiritual mentor and he invited me to personal inquiry and personal development that I'd never really done before. And he held me to a really high standard of doing it. And I spent so much money on it that I was like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, I paid all this money. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do it. So I felt like I had no choice. Of course, we always have a choice. So I did the work and I built a model based on his, and also did a lot of personal work to come to terms and to take accountability for the life that I had built, and to move past blaming other people for building that life, blaming my parents, blaming my schools, blaming whatever, taking full responsibility, full accountability, cleaning up my act, cleaning up my life, my diet, my health, my relationships, everything. And, went on a deep journey of healing. And every time I learned how to heal something, I'd share it with my community, with you guys. And people started doing the work alongside me and with me. And that's where, the business really became something that I love.
Could you share a little bit of, maybe not numbers, but 1x you were making when you started kind of running, and then by the time you really started to create something that was aligned with yourself, how big it grew? And
yeah.
then,
Yeah. Well, and so when I started the business, I mean, like everybody, I probably made 40,000 or 50,000 the first year, 60,000. I mean, it grew real slow those first few years, but by the 6th, 7th year, it was doing about 300,000 in revenues, which was my best year ever. But I almost killed myself to do it. That was the year everything crashed and burned. I did the new model, and the following year generated over almost $900,000 that year. So it grew, it over tripled, it tripled in 1 year, and then went to over $1 million the year after that. So it grew very quickly. And there was also growth that was out of alignment because I made a lot of mistakes. I enrolled a lot of people. This is part of what you wanted to talk about too. Like I got kind of like high on the wins and on the achievement, and I would enroll. Like I remember one weekend, I don't know if you were there, 2017. Okay, we enrolled 17 people all at once in one weekend. We made over $400,000 in one weekend. And then I proceeded to, over the next year, lose all those clients. So, it was not a straight like improvement. It wasn't a hockey. I mean, it was a hockey stick financially, but then it had to level off. It dipped and it came, but so there's been definitely, my sense is that every time we expand, it's like breath. There's just a little bit of a contraction that has to happen in order to maintain it. It's not going to be just like expansion, expansion, expansion. There's like,
I love that.
Like there's an organicness to it. And when we get too scared of that contraction, then the energy precedes outcomes. Like we can't, it's practicing relaxing into the contraction, relaxing into all of it.
I love that. This is the first time that I hear this analogy, and it's pretty powerful. It applies to me right now, definitely. So, could you share a little bit about this concept that is very powerful, especially for women in business, of the the balance of the masculine and feminine energy?
Yeah.
In
So,
business, right?
And say the last part.
In business, because we know maybe in relationships, but it's different once we learn that balance for our growth in business.
Yeah. So, I, like a lot of women in this modern era, I mean, I grew up in the 80s. And so if you remember, or if you pretend to remember, if you look back at movies and remember that the 80s were all about like the big shoulder pads, and it was women like busting onto this corporate environment, and like, we can do anything a man can do better. That was like the frequency of it. It was like, let us in there and we're going to show you. And that was necessary to get in. It was like, we had to like make our space. And I think that what I learned in those years was like, I have to do it like a man, as good as or better. And the masculine energy, in the sense of like when we think about it from a divine masculine, divine feminine, I'm not talking about male, female, or gender or any of that. We're staying out of that. And we're just talking about, masculine, feminine energy, thinking of it as like yin and yang, or yang and yin. The yang energy, the masculine, is the energy of direction and competition and building and, forcing and dominating and yes or no and this or that, right? It's a very structured energy. It's the sun, it's daytime, it's the known, it's certainty. That's all the realm of quote unquote masculine, aka yang energy. Now, the balance to that, universal balance that's required, is the yin, which is the feminine, which is the receptive energy, the open energy, the diffuse awareness energy, the moon, the mystery, the void, the womb, creation, right? Like the nothing into something. And of course, it takes both. You can't have an egg reproduce by itself. You can't have a sperm reproduce by itself. Like in the most fundamental biological terms, creation, aka life, requires both masculine and feminine. And if you think about it in terms of like even the sperm and the egg, the sperm has a very frenetic, energy that drives forward. And the egg has a very, it's big and round. It's the largest cell in the body. The sperm is the smallest cell in the body. The largest cell in the body just sort of sits there. And apparently, from science, we know now, sends out a signal that calls the sperm to it, to her. And so in business, I learned a lot about the masculine energy in my school, in my MBA, competition, grades, studying, structure, tests, scores. Like I got really good at that. That was achievement. But I never learned anything about this other thing, this mysterious feminine energy, which is the magnetic. It's the frequency of love. It's nurturing, it's caretaking. And there's such a need for it in business and in the world. And business drives the world, right? Business is the engine that drives pretty much everything right now in this culture that we live in. So bringing the feminine in, from a global perspective makes sense. We can all see that. And it also makes sense from a personal perspective. Like it allows for, the mystery, the come to me, like that egg calling clients in, and the beauty of the feminine integration with the masculine is like the both. And it's like a dance, it's not as, to me, it's very beautiful to watch a man and a woman dance together. It's like that interplay, that interaction. And in business, it's the same. Like the masculine is picking up the phone and making the call, asking for the thing, get the contract, make the sale. And the feminine is the allure, is the colors and the branding and the messaging and the mystery and the allure of come to me. And those two things together work beautifully in business. And so many people have just forgotten about or ignored or bypassed that feminine aspect.
Yes, I love the way you describe it. And I think that's one of the other pieces that really blew my mind, because I always can say, I can say that I was that way also, like very masculine energy, and learning this is a process, is a lifetime journey. And at the same time, it's so powerful to know that there is a way where things happen in a more connected to nature, and is not influenced by what's happening outside or what others are doing or tell me what to do. It's more about the inner work and connection with the intuition.
Yes.
One other thing that I want to ask you, Michelle, that I can say that I live that, is the difference between being in a group or a community and being in a culture. And it's so beyond anything that I imagined. So I would like for you also to share, maybe how did you discover there was a difference between building, this is my community and then this is my culture, and how that has impacted you and maybe the people that have been through that process with you, like
Well,
me.
thank you. I think the best way for me to answer that is just to kind of share what happened. So 10 years ago, when I changed my model, the model was you invite people into a group coaching program. I was like, cool, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make more money with less time. Yay. But what happened was I realized that, when people came into a group, there, it's a community, and if you have like people that don't fit in the community, it can derail your conversations. It can mess up your events. Like, you can have drama if people are not like aligned in terms of values. So it's like, oh, okay, maybe I need to be more discerning about who comes into this community, into this program, and build this community a little more intentionally. Okay. So as I started doing that, I started recognizing, okay, well, in order to build a community intentionally, I have to be a better leader. I have to hold boundaries. I have to set standards. I have to hold people accountable. I have to have difficult conversations like, oh boy, all right, this is really uncomfortable. Can I quit now? But I had contracts, and I was making money. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I got to stick with it. And over the years, what I realized that, well, every community has a culture. The question is it a culture that's, number one, healthy, which is a lot of different things. I don't have like an exact acronym, but I would say healthy means, is it a safe place? Is it a place where people feel like they belong? Is it a place where people are aligned on certain values? Maybe even on certain beliefs. Like, over the years, what emerged was like, what's the culture that I want to be in and lead? Right. And what I discovered a lot about myself, like, over the years, I've had to reevaluate all the time. Like recently, with all the political upheaval going on and the disconnection, I had to decide, well, do I want a group of people who think all the same thing? Because that would be easier. But is that the culture that I really want? No. I want a culture that reflects what I believe the world can be. The more beautiful world, to quote Charles Eisenstein, that I think is possible is one where we disagree and we still love each other, and we can still be respectful with each other, and we can still honor each other and witness each other, even if we don't believe what each other believes. So, community is one thing. Culture to me is like the vision of something. It's something that embodies certain values. And you get to build your culture your way. I get to build my culture my way. And people, that's a big part of it, is like allowing people the sovereignty to align or not align, to, to stay and keep going, or to graduate and leave. The community building is beautiful. I think, to me, the distinction is that culture building is having it align with certain values, and that it represent and it become a testament to a certain vision for the world.
Mhm. Yes, thank you for creating that. Definitely makes a difference in the world. Michelle, I know you're a great reader, and I always like to ask you, what book are you reading right now that you would recommend us?
I'm always reading a book. I mean, the book that I'm reading right now, I don't know. I'm only about a quarter of the way into it. It's a history of the senses. I'm obsessed with perfumes right now at the moment.
Uh-huh.
I have I don't want to say I have ADD, but I was diagnosed with ADD. One of the things that a lot of people that are diagnosed with ADD claim is they get these obsessions. And all my life, I've had these like momentary, like, short-lived. I've been obsessed with crochet. I've been obsessed with racing my Mini Cooper. I've been obsessed with, at the moment, for the last 6 months or so, perfume and smells and scents. So right now I'm diving into this book about the world of the senses, which leads me to a book that I'll actually recommend, which is, and you've read it, I think, Kareem, it's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That book is very powerful and confronting at the same
Yeah,
time.
it is, because it forces you to take responsibility, and it's liberating too. It forces you to take responsibility, and it's also liberating because it's your responsibility. I
Yes.
decide, I choose, I
Yes.
create, right? So I'll recommend that book, because I just got back from Joe Dispenza, who wrote the book. I just got back from his week-long advanced retreat in Dallas, and it was an incredible experience. And I'm very motivated and moved and inspired. I've been meditating every single day that I got back. at least 40 minutes a day, and some days longer. So I've been, and it's not like your usual like sit in silence meditation. It's guided meditation. So they're very powerful for changing, for transforming, for whatever. So I'm a big fan. I would recommend that book. I love it. I think he's phenomenal.
Yes, if you haven't had the chance to read it. And I think it's a book to be reading every so often because we truly transform and evolve, and maybe it's about time for me to read it again. So I highly recommend it as well. Michelle, in a movie or a documentary also that you could see it would be valuable for us to receive, to transform from?
I'm gonna pick something a little different. And I
Okay.
haven't thought about this show in a while, but there's a show, I watched it maybe 5 or 6 years ago called Being Erica.
Okay.
And
Being
I don't
Erica.
even know if it's Netflix or Amazon Prime or Being Erica. It's you know me, I love my magical stories with a touch of magic. So it's got a magical premise, which is that this girl, this young woman meets a psychologist or a therapist, and she goes into his office and he's like a magical therapist, and she's basically able to go back in time and relive moments from her past and redo them, like do-overs. It's like 4 or 5
Uh-huh.
seasons long. It's a lot of seasons and it's awesome. It's such a good show because
I
it's
love it.
into regret, transformation, growth, evolution. I mean, they go into deep stuff in this series that no, I've never really heard anybody else talking about. I was obsessed with this show when it was out. It's I think it was made in Canada. I did get a glimpse of a dollar bill in it, and it wasn't an American dollar bill, but they were pretending like they were in New York, I think. I don't know. Anyway, ignore all that and just get the,
I'll look it up definitely.
so
And
good.
if I find the link, I'll just share it for people to find it.
Yeah, I love it.
Michelle, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here. I love for you to be doing what you do. Definitely one of the things that I could say is that the transformation or the transition that I did from doing a regular personal branding to a high impact personal brand came from me participating in your mentoring program. So if maybe someone is listening to us and wants to know more about you, how can they find you?
Thank you. They can go to, I would say the best place to kind of absorb me and what I do is YouTube.
Okay.
I would search for me on YouTube, Superstar Activator, Michelle Villalobos. That would be the best place. And then of course my website, superstaractivator.com.
Awesome. And just to finish, anything that you would like to say to all the leaders right now that are listening to us and that the imposter syndrome doesn't let them go out and make the difference they are meant to be in the world? What would be your message, Michelle?
Mm. I would, something we talked about briefly earlier, just to remember that energy precedes outcomes, and that the most fundamental work that we can do that makes the biggest impact, like in the quantum field, is to elevate our own internal emotional state, and not by bypassing things that we feel, because that got me in a lot of trouble. But by doing a practice, I basically say you've got to feel the feelings you have and cultivate the feelings you want, both. You cannot just feel the feelings you have especially if they're disempowering, because you'll circle the drain and go down. And you can't just feel the feelings you want, because then you will bypass what's true and real. And there's valuable information in your feelings. So it's really the integration of feeling what you feel and cultivating what you want to feel. That's the work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. I hope I can have you some other time sharing more of your wisdom because I know you
Anytime.
have a lot. Thank you,
Anytime. I love it. Love you. Thank you, Kareem.
Michelle.